There's some research to back up what might be the best diet for potent stimulation of GLP-1. That sounds like a lot of Greek. What does that really mean? GLP-1 is released by cells within our gut when we consume food. Now, its job isn't necessarily to suppress our appetite, like people might think, because there's things like Semaglutide, Ozempic, that are GLP-1 receptor agonists that people sort of take somewhat quote-unquote off-label to try to suppress their appetite. But the reality is GLP-1 doesn't really suppress your appetite. It does indirectly, but GLP-1 takes care of the pancreas. It helps the beta cells produce insulin so that our glucose is lower, and it helps take care and protect the beta cells, and also helps blunt the response of glucagon. In very simple terms, it is more of a glucose modulator. It helps our blood sugar, which can certainly impact our appetite later on. But the research surrounding the Mediterranean diet is very interesting. Now, the cool thing is, before you click off this video thinking, hey, I got the answer, it's Mediterranean, I'm going to teach you things that you can implement to apply these Mediterranean style approaches to your diet without adopting a full-blown Mediterranean diet. I also put a link down below for Thrive Market. I have some new products with Thrive Market that you might like, ones that I literally created myself. They are different forms of dessert type nut butters. So I have a cinnamon Brazil nut butter, I have a chocolate hazelnut butter, and a macadamia nut butter. And they're sweetened with allulose, so they automatically have that impact on potentially reducing blood sugar anyway, because allulose has some interesting research behind that. But they just taste delicious. I've been working on them for 2 years. Thrive Market is an online grocery store, so whether you get my nut butters or not, I don't really care. I would like you to try them, but it's a great place to get your groceries. It's literally a grocery store now, and it gets delivered to your doorstep, and that link down below saves you 30% off whatever you want, including my nut butters, including the fresh items, including the frozen items, and including everything else. And you can sort by diet type, so you can get things that don't have any sugar. If you grocery shop and you're human, you should check it out. It is game-changing stuff. Link down below beneath this video. But first, let's start with some very interesting research. There was a study that was published in the Journal of the American Nutrition Association. It had subjects go on a 28-day Mediterranean diet, which was rich in like monounsaturated fatty acids, some polyunsaturated fatty acids, moderate amount of protein, decent amount of fiber. But they compared this to a similar diet with higher saturated fat. And they also kind of compared it to more of a standard American diet as well. Results were pretty interesting. Even in a similar diet, the diet that had more of the monounsaturated fats, like the olive oils, the avocado itself, macadamia nuts, even almonds, good nuts like that, well, that one had a significant stimulation of GLP-1. This led to significant improvements in insulin sensitivity, lower levels of fasting insulin, lower levels of circulating insulin, lower levels of HOMA-IR, so basically the lagging indicator of insulin, and lower postprandial glucose. So GLP-1 is a very important piece. Now, if we look at another piece of the equation, there was a study that compared olive oil to butter, which is interesting because I find this fascinating because olive oil is more of a Mediterranean fat, whereas butter isn't bad, like good quality, good grass-fed butter, trust me, I am a fan of. Trust me, I'm not trying to demonize it. But it's very interesting to show how two fats can impact GLP-1 significantly different. So they gave subjects 50 grams of carbohydrates plus olive oil, and then they gave them 50 grams of carbohydrates plus butter. They did this in healthy people and type 2 diabetics. What they found is that only the olive oil group had a potent stimulation of GLP-1 because monounsaturated fatty acids tend to bind to the free fatty acid receptor 1 and free fatty acid receptor 2 better. It's not because saturated fat is bad or whatever, it's not the case. No, they just happen to bind to the receptors that trigger more GLP-1, which is exactly what happens when you take in Semaglutide or Ozempic, something like that, right? It's just a more extreme situation. So let's talk about the things that you can add in. Step one, above all else, is increase your protein intake. That's the biggest thing. Okay, if you look at even the Mediterranean diet, even though it is moderate to moderate low protein, it's still a lot more protein than most people are getting, especially in the United States. It's pretty sad because the quality of protein that we get here is just garbage. They're eating good quality, lean meats that are typically organic and just high quality. The next most important thing, and it doesn't matter what kind of diet you do, if you sprinkle in monounsaturated fats, olive oil, avocado oil, macadamia nut oil, macadamia nuts, good quality nuts, this is going to have an impact on GLP-1 secretion. It just simply is, and the data is so strong with that. This is what I try to explain, is that just because a food isn't from a specific region doesn't mean that it cannot have the attributes of that particular region or diet. Mediterranean fats are largely monounsaturated fats. Even though macadamia nuts are, say, like something from the islands, it doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to a Mediterranean diet, because as far as potency, super powerful monounsaturated fatty acid, super potent omega-7s, which are tremendous when it comes down to insulin sensitivity. So a very, very good Mediterranean food to add into a Mediterranean diet. The next thing that you want to focus on adding in is going to be flavonoid-rich foods. Okay, these are huge in a Mediterranean diet. I want you to think of the foods that are Mediterranean. Onions, you've got garlic, you've got olives, you've got mushrooms, you've got fruits, you've got deep leafy greens, you've got capers. What do all these things have in common? Okay, yeah, they're healthy vegetables, right? Yeah, they have antioxidants, right? Yeah, they have polyphenols. Yeah, they have phenolic compounds. They're not just that. They have specific flavonoids in them, and namely quercetin. Quercetin you can get in supplement form, but if you get it in whole food form, it's likely going to be better for you in the long term. These flavonoids can bind to free fatty acid receptors in a very similar way to unsaturated fats, triggering the release of GLP-1, which affects our glucose levels, brings our glucose down, affects insulin, but also potent stimulator of GLP-1 means that we're going to have a more suppressed appetite. So now I want to look at a study that's very interesting because it looks at a Mediterranean diet and its effect on GLP-1, but also what's called oxyntomodulin. Now, oxyntomodulin is the precursor to, or continues to stimulate GLP-1, but also GLP-1 receptors. It activates, it turns on the whole orchestra. So this study was published in Diabetes Metabolism Research and Reviews. It gave subjects a Mediterranean diet meal, or it gave them a high-fiber vegetarian meal. This is cool because it compares vegetarian to Mediterranean, and in most cases we would expect, like, I don't know, sort of like research that talks about plant-based stuff to kind of float to the top because it tends to happen that way sometimes. But this is very cool because it actually put the two against each other, and it found that the Mediterranean diet worked better when it came down to GLP-1, when it came down to insulin, than the high-fiber vegetarian diet. This is pretty cool. The interesting thing is that these were isocaloric diets, so they had the same amount of calories, but the Mediterranean diet had a more potent stimulation of GLP-1. Why do you think this is? Well, let's take a look. Let's reverse engineer it. We've got the high protein with the Mediterranean, or the moderate protein. We've got the fiber, which is also a stimulator of GLP-1. We've got the flavonoid-rich foods, also potent stimulators of GLP-1s. We've got olive oils, we've got nuts, all potent stimulators of GLP-1. So everything in a Mediterranean diet just so happens to be a much more potent stimulator. You compare that to even, let's just say an Americanized, even vegan diet, right? And I say that because most vegans you might meet, what are they going to be eating? They're probably going to eat Pop-Tarts. They're going to eat processed vegan food. They're probably eating still high amounts of saturated fat coming from like palm oil, stuff like that. It's still not well crafted. And I'm not bagging on vegans. I'm just saying, as far as convenience is concerned, we end up with a lot of processed food. But if you look at even the American diet in general, high fry food, okay, low quality ingredients, low fiber, high saturated fat, high sugar, all things that are hyper palatable but do not promote the secretion or stimulation of GLP-1. So if you want the effect of semaglutide without having to go on semaglutide, start reverse engineering your diet and adding the Mediterranean foods in step by step by step. Starting with the protein, next up adding in the olive oil, the avocado oils, the macadamia nuts, the macadamia nut oil. These are the things you need to do first. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.